Reggie Miller, NBA on TNT. Reg has game 2 between the Rockets and Warriors. That'll be coming up tomorrow night. And then he'll be in Houston for game 4. That'll be next Monday. Reg joins us now. Reg, where do you want to start with this series between Golden State and Houston?
Well, here's the thing. If the Rockets would have won that ball game, I'm sure we would have heard the same comments about having a fair chance coming from Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, and Steve Kerr and the Warriors, and Steph Curry. Look, it's in the eye of the beholder. Were the officiating bad? Absolutely. But they were bad on both sides. And here's the problem, Dan. You and I have had these conversations on this very show numerous times, and this is the conversation I had with the league. So what you're telling me, and this is the conversation I had with the league, that you're going to call this in October, November, December, all this freedom of movement, shooters being able to come down in one spot, guys going underneath them, and they did. October, November, a little bit in December, they called it. Freedom of movement, no clutching, no grabbing. They called all that. Well, as you and I know, come playoff time, players decide games, and the game becomes much more physical. It becomes much more half court. No more freedom of movement, no more up and down and running. It becomes half court sets, and your best defense versus some best offense, which we're kind of seeing in this series because we have great one-on-one players. Kevin Durant, James Harden, Steph Curry, great one-on-one players. So all this clutching, grabbing that were fouls in October, November, December, when there was freedom of movement, and they absolutely called it, and there was no hand-checking, the game becomes much more physical come playoffs, and officials like to swallow their whistle. They want the players and teams to decide games. Is it right? No. But I had this very conversation. So what you're telling me, Monty McCutcheon, is you're going to call that in April or May. And his response was, absolutely, we have to. So, look, the league, they have to decide how they want to do this, all right? Because personally, I like how it's being officiated because you're letting players decide. But you called this all year long. So why not call it in the playoffs?
But can you change, though, Reg? Can you change the philosophy of what you're going to call from game to game in this series?
And here's the problem. It will change. It will change on Tuesday because it will be a different officiating crew. And it's in the eye of the beholder. So these officials, they were letting it play rough. They were letting a lot go. You might have another officiating crew tomorrow, the game that Kevin Harlan and I are calling, that everything will be a touch foul. It's eye of the beholder, so it could very well change. But if the Rockets would have won that game, we would have heard the same comments coming from the Warriors. So in my opinion, the officials did a great job because it was bad on both sides.
Yeah, but I can't say, well, it's bad on both sides, therefore it's fair. It shouldn't be bad on both sides. And I have a problem with the Warriors putting that foot underneath James Harden when they try to close out on Harden. I just don't like that, Reg, because, if you went up for a shot and I put my foot underneath you, you're thinking about coming down and trying to avoid my foot. And I thought they did that a couple of times with James Harden.
Let's go back to where this rule came from. And this came from in that very building when Zaza Pachulia contested on Kawhi Leonard when San Antonio was up by 22 points in the first half, comes down, twists his ankle, and is done the rest of that series. They lose that game, which they had in full control, and that's really where this rule came from. I'm not going to sit here and say the Warriors are doing that purposely because they're closing out. How are you? If you do not close out to shooters, if you do not contest, if you're not close to a shooter, I don't care who you are. These guys are so talented, it's easy money. So you've got to be able to contest. You've got to be somewhat close to a shooter. I'm not saying purposely come down and put your foot underneath where someone can twist their ankle. That's a dirty play. What Zaza did was a dirty play if it was intentional. I can't get into the head of Zaza, but if you're doing it intentionally to hurt someone, absolutely. But it's hard for the officials to deem, is he doing this on purpose or is he closing out? James Harden creates a lot of space from his contact. There's a lot of times he's throwing chicken wings to create space as well, and they're not calling it. People need to look at it at both sides here, because me of all people, I will never come to the defense of officials. I love officials; they're all great guys, but it's so hard to officiate James Harden because he travels, he creates space from his chicken wings, and he wants to foul when they're coming underneath him, but he doesn't want them to call it when he's creating space with his off arm on that step back. It goes both ways, people.
Yeah. You're the godfather of that kind of getting your leg out there and drawing some contact, aren't you?
Well, I got it from World Be Free. That's where I first started, seeing, oh, my goodness, he's creating space with that little leg kick. So in my backyard in Riverside, California, I kind of started shooting kind of like that when defenders were close to me. And it was great until Doc Rivers and coaches started to say, wait a minute, this is an illegal move, and then it got banned. I mean,
wow.
I would say half of my 4-point plays were because of that, of me creating space with my legs. It's not my fault you're that close to me. Back off.
Do you realize that James Harden, that he was fouled 101 times shooting three-pointers this year? That's a third, two-thirds. The next on the list is 36. So he's got 101. Granted, he takes more threes than anybody, but he does get those calls, and he does create separation. Yeah. And while I agree with you, I think it evened out that it was just bad. I can't have bad officiating in a game of this magnitude, even if it's bad for both sides.
Yes, absolutely. Everything you just said is correct. There's blame on both sides. The officiating was bad, but it was bad for the Warriors, and it was bad for the Rockets. We would be hearing these same comments from the Warriors if they had lost that ball game. And how many of those potential three-point fouls that James Harden got, you said 100 and something, did he get in game one? Did he get even one? Probably not. So that lets you know how bad the officiating was. And yes, he was fouled by the letter of the law and what they're talking about, freedom of movement and players being able to come down on their jump shots. What they called in October, November, December, January, yes, he got fouled. But what they are calling in the playoffs and letting the players decide and being more physical, that it's eye of the beholder. This officiating crew let it be an old school, late 90s, early 2000s playoff game. That's what it was. They let the players decide, and it was much more physical. It could change tomorrow.
He's Reggie Miller, the Hall of Famer. He's got tomorrow night's game 2 between the Rockets and Warriors at 10:30 Eastern on TNT. McLovin has a hot take.
And I'm going to say this, Dan. If anything, the Warriors are kicking themselves. The Rockets are kicking themselves.
They should have won that game. Absolutely.
They absolutely should have won game 1. You've had short rest for the Warriors. Two of their main 3 guys have not severe, sprained ankles, but they're gimpy. They're not running as they normally do in Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. This was a game you had to have. This is a game you should have won by double digits going away. Kevin Durant.
McLovin has a Kevin Durant hot take here.
Okay, Reggie. When they give Kevin Durant a good matchup, like a guard covers him, I feel like the Warriors have to go to Durant, and it becomes one-on-one ball and takes him out of the kind of basketball they want to play and sort of screws them up. They hit a bunch of twos, and the Rockets get the advantage because they can hit threes. Is that crazy?
No, it's not crazy, but it depends on what the matchup is. And like I highlighted earlier, come playoff basketball, the game slows down anyway. So all that motion offense and freedom of movement and ball movement and high assists that we see the Warriors get during the regular season, that's all great and things. But when you get into a playoff series and Mike D'Antoni and his staff is taking away 2 or 3 of the Warriors' best offensive weapons and plays, and you've got 2 players that are somewhat gimpy on bad ankles, you've got to feed Kevin Durant. So I don't mind the isolation one-on-one, but the Rockets have to make threes if they're going to give up those mid-range twos to Kevin Durant, who has been unbelievable. Him and Kawhi Leonard have been unbelievable in these playoffs in terms of offense. So The way KD is going, I don't mind that if I'm Steve Kerr, because if you're going to put a guard on him, he's going to get any shot he wants. But you've got to counteract that by making threes. They didn't make enough threes in game one to counteract the mid-range game of Kevin Durant.
I like how we are somehow concerned that Kevin Durant may not be all in with Golden State. Meanwhile, he's probably played his best basketball in the last 5 weeks, and it feels like the other guys on the Golden State Warriors are the ones leaving in free agency, not Kevin Durant.
The other words need to be saying thank you. Thank you, KD, because he is absolutely carrying them. But I will say this. This is what makes them special, because before it was the defense of Draymond Green, it was the shooting of Klay Thompson, and the overall playmaking and shooting of Steph Curry. KD adds a different wrinkle to them because he is the best one-on-one player probably in the game right now, along with James Harden. So he just adds a different dimension to them, and when he has it cooking like this, especially in the playoffs, and the game is slower, you could just throw him down there. Who are you going to put on him? P.J. Tucker? He's physical, but he's only 6'5". He can shoot over him. You're going to put a small guy like Chris Paul on him? Okay, that's lunch meat. There's no – you're trying to put a bigger player in a switch in Clint Capella? All right, I'm right by you, and I'm finishing at the rim. There is no one who can guard KD in this series. And we saw a little bit of this in that Clippers series when he was challenged by Patrick Beverley, and you know who I am. You guys know who I am, and he showed out, okay? Well, we're seeing the best of Kevin Durant right now.
I still love that. I'm Kevin Durant, like, who are you?
You know who I am.
Yeah.
You know my resume. You know my resume.
Yeah. Have fun tomorrow night there, Reg, in Houston. And you might be like the 5th or 6th best three-point shooter on the floor tomorrow night.
You're absolutely right about that.
And there's no shame in that.
Did you say 5th? I would say maybe the 3rd best. Okay, maybe 4th.
Okay, so Klay instead. Is there anybody over 50 in the world?
I would put James in there. James he can let it go.
Is James a better three-point shooter than you? James Harden a better three-point shooter?
Right now at 53, absolutely.
Okay, but it's close.
It's close. I'm knocking on the door.
Is there any?
Hey, Theodore, you know who I am. You know my resume.
Okay, if the entire world, 50 and over, had a three-point shooting contest.
Man, give me my belt. Can you give me my belt?
Is there any former player that you would worry about who's over the age of 50 from three-point range?
Craig Hodges, I would worry about.
Okay.
Glenn Rice. I don't know if he's 40, though. I may worry about. I don't know if he's 50. Excuse me. I don't know if he's 50. You said over 50, right?
Yeah, over 50.
I would say Craig Hodges.
That's the only guy.
Yes.
Glenn Rice is 51.
I would worry about Glenn. I would worry about Glenn.
What if Bird got in shape?
Well, that's an if. He's got to get in shape first. That's an if. He's got to get there first.
Yeah.
I know those other guys are in shape, but he has to get there.
Glenn Robinson isn't. Glenn Rice isn't.
I'm not going there. He's the one that carried him at All-Star Weekend, though. In shape or not. He's the one that and Ray's not 50, so I don't have to worry about Ray. He's not 50.
Yeah. All right. Well, just in case, that comes up in conversation, we can start a tournament of 50 and over. If they can do this 3-on-3.
Give me the belt. 50 or over, give me the belt.
Good luck tomorrow night.
Belt.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Reg. All right.
Thank you, Dad. Love y'all.
That's Reggie Aloysius Miller, Jr. III.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.